Let's move on, though. 6 through 15. These guys we're moving up the big board, closer and closer to that top 5. Brandon, we'll start with you. Start with your number 15 guy. Take us all the way to 6.
At 15, I've got Lonnie Walker IV, a shooting guard from Miami. At 14, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, point guard, Kentucky. Robert Williams III at 13, the center from Texas A&M. At 12, Miles Bridges, forward from Michigan State. At 11, Colin Sexton, point guard, Alabama. Kevin Knox at number 10, the forward from Kentucky. At 9, Trae Young, point guard, Oklahoma. At 8, the small forward from Villanova, Mikal Bridges. At 7, Michael Porter Jr., the forward from Mizzou. And at 6, Jaren Jackson Jr., the center from Michigan State.
We're not getting into it. I just want to say, I can't believe we got Trae Young at 9. I can't, but to me, I can't believe it. But going on into mine, number 15, Robin Williams, the 4-5 from Texas A&M. Then Lonnie Walker at 14, the guard from Miami of Florida. Number 13, Wendell Carter Jr., the 4-5 from the Duke Blue Devils. Number 12, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the guard from the Kentucky Wildcats. Number 11, his teammate, Kevin Knox, the forward from that Kentucky team. Then at number 10, Miles Bridges, the forward from the Michigan State Spartans. Number 9, he moved up from mine, mainly because I put him at, 16. Then in the conference tournament and in a little bit in the tournament, he completely went off. So Colin Sexton, you're back in the top 10. Congratulations. I will never disrespect you again. Then number 8, Mikal Bridges.
Be careful. Don't make any promises Villanova. You can't keep.
Then at number 7, Michael Porter Jr., the forward from Mizzou. And at number 6, Mo Bamba, the center from Texas. And the first guy I want to bring up is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And the reason why is this is a guy from my 2.0, so I'll look it up really quick. My 2.0, he went from 18, now he sits at 12. On yours, he sat at number 21, and now he is at number 14. So he has rose both of ours from the first segment now into the second segment. The thing I want to ask you about him is he's a guy who had a really strong beginning of the end of the conference tournament into the tournament. We're 29 against Tennessee in that win where they beat Tennessee for the SEC tournament crown. Then against Davidson, 19 points where I believe he went 9 of 10 from the foul line. Yeah, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Had 8 rebounds, 7 assists in that game. Then Buffalo, he went off for 27 points, 5 of 7 from the line, went 12 of 10 from the field, and that one, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. And then in the loss to K-State, 15 points, 11 of 12, though, from the foul line in that game. Thing I want to ask you about Shai Gilgeous is everyone's assuming I'm putting Luka into his own little bubble. Like, looking at just the point guards that we've seen, Trae Young's probably going to go first for the point guards. Then Colin Sexton, we're assuming, goes first. If those two go high enough, I want to ask you this. I know that you and I have him. I got to look one more time where we have him 12 and 14. But my question is with him, how high could he go? Like, could he be a top 10 pick in the draft based on a team if they're like, hey, you know what? We really want a point guard. Sexton and Young are off the board and Shai is there.
I think that the only way that could happen is if a team relies solely on what he did towards the end of the season and there in March. Yeah. I think that's the only way that he's going to be able to be into the top 10. And that's because that's where he had the most confidence. When you look at this player, the player that we saw in the fall, and then you look at the player that we saw in the spring, you saw two different players. You saw a very tentative guy in the beginning, and then you saw this very confident, cool, collected, looked like he knew exactly what he was doing out there, freshman that didn't look like a freshman in the fall. So I think that if they're going based on just what he did in that body of work, then yes, he could be a top 10 pick. But if they go overall, I think that he's probably right in the range of probably 12 to 15, 12 to 17, somewhere in there.
Because the one thing that I loved most about Shai Gilgeous, especially later on, because all season, if you kind of look at his free throw numbers, 2 of 2, 1 of 1. Ooh, there's a 5 of 6. 3 of 3. 4 of 6. Then there's a couple, like the Georgia game on New Year's Eve, where it's like, holy crap, 12 of 13. That's really good. But you got 13 foul shots in one game? One game? It's kind of impressive. Then a 7 of 10 against Vanderbilt. Then an 11 of 3 against Ole Miss. But you look at down the stretch, played Alabama in the SEC tournament game. In that game, mano a mano with Colin Sexton, who right now I would say is the second best point guard in the league. 9 of 12 from the foul line there. But then the tournament, 9 of 10. Yeah, the 5 of 7 against Buffalo, but he was 10 of 12 from everywhere else in that game. And then the K-State one, yeah, he only shot 2 of 10 from the field, but he got to the line 11 of his 12 shots went in from there and got 11 of his 15, all from the foul line. This is a guy that's interesting to me because we don't know what's exactly going to happen. We like to think we know what's going to happen on draft night, but he's a guy to me where I wonder how high he could creep up on draft boards, because in this league, everyone needs a guy. Everyone needs a guy that needs to handle the ball. And when you can drive the lane, when you can get to the foul line, someone might fall in love with that and then be like, you know what, we got to take him. The thing is, to me, the only guy he's chasing in my book would be Colin Sexton, where for both of us, we've got Sexton above Gilgeous, because let's be honest, I don't think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to catch Trae Young. I don't think, there's no way he's going to catch Trae Young to be the best point guard, the top point guard taken in this draft.
Well, Ricky, if it were up to you, I think you'd have Trae Young at number 1.
Well, not at number 1. We'll get to that in the last segment, but the thing I wanted to ask, kind of bringing Colin Sexton into this.
Well, I'm not done with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander yet, so don't you go anywhere.
Go ahead then.
Is what I wanted to say is what we started to see more with this young fellow is that we saw him not, again, like I said, not be so timid, that he was very confident. He's a very unselfish player. He makes the guys around him that much better. And I think that you're always going to want a guy like that on your team. He creates space for himself off the dribble, so he knows exactly how to do that. When you have someone who does that, again, if you can make space, create space and make plays off the dribble, that makes you so much more impressive. That also makes you that much more coveted by a team when you're talking the draft and by an NBA team. He's got great length, great hands. He really has a lot of good things going for him. And again, I think those things started to come out more as the season went along. Again, you didn't see all those things from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the beginning of the year.
Which
but
is
once
what we see with one-and-done players.
Well, most likely that's what you're going to get, is you're going to kind of have them start off. They're going to, be all right, but then they start to feel it and they get in a groove and you just go. And he just went. And a lot of these things I think is because he got his confidence going, and we saw him become the player that he is right now, which is really kind of fun to see that progression, obviously as a freshman. But I'm always impressed that guys with guys that are making their teammates that much better. Not every player does that. Not every player does that. You wish they did, but he does. And this is also a guy who's small. He's 6'6", 180. That's what they have him at, 6'6", 180. It's like, oh my gosh. That's like almost light as a feather compared to some of the other guys that we've looked at.
The thing that counteracts that, though, he is 6'6", with a 6'11" wingspan.
It's unbelievable.
He's got long arms, and that's the thing that helps him. Probably one of the biggest things that I think is his negative to me is his turnover numbers, where on average it was about 3 per game. But you even look at some of them. In that K-State game, 5 turnovers, 3 in the one against Buffalo. He had games like Florida, which is a better defensive team, 5 turnovers. You had 4 against Ole Miss. You had 4 against Texas A&M. You had 6 against South Carolina. And that's, to me, where that's the thing he's got to work on at the next level, taking care of the basketball and showing off those good things to where, like you said it, creating space. I can see it right now. Shai Gilgeous drives in, kicks it out to a wide open shooter, three ball goes in. Like, that's where the league is going to, where when you are kind of going towards that three ball, he's a guy that can drive in, kick it out. Like, drive in, kick it out to an open shooter, or drive in, put it up, draw the foul, go to the line. And the thing is, will he be able to do that at the next level? Draw those fouls, go to the line still, while being 6'6". I know he's got that 6'11" wingspan, but while being a little smaller, will he be able to do that at the next level in the NBA? The thing that I was thinking about, though, was kind of bringing Colin Sexton in, but only for the fact of, will he be able to surpass Colin Sexton by draft time, as he is the number 2 point guard in this draft? Because the one thing that we can look at, and looking head to head, Alabama, when they played the last time, 19 points and 8 assists for Shai Gilgeous in that game. When they met just after Valentine's Day, though, only 6 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds for him. Do you see a world where the two SEC guys kind of flip spots, where Shai Gilgeous is above Colin Sexton, or will Colin Sexton always be the second point guard, and it's Colin Sexton chasing Trae Young, not Shai Gilgeous chasing Colin Sexton?
I think that you could see that. I know that Colin Sexton averages about 5 more points a game than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did. But one thing that you see with that you don't see with Colin Sexton, that you do see with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is that where I said Alexander really helps his, it makes his teammates better. You didn't necessarily see that with Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
There weren't a whole lot of times where you're like, gosh, his play out there is making so-and-so better. No. I mean, you look at you talk about Alabama, I can name you one person on Alabama. Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
One person.
Whereas
I can name you a lot of people on Kentucky, and maybe that's not fair because Kentucky is often looked at very closely because of them being a one-and-done school, a one-and-done team, and they bring in a lot of big-name players, so maybe that's not fair. But, again, multiple people on Kentucky. You don't, unless you're an Alabama basketball fan, on Alabama.
Well, and I mean, that's, to me, something where I get what you're saying, like, oh, we can't knock Colin Sexton for that, but for Shai Gilgeous, like, that's the thing. Like, you look at, for me, the guy I had right above Shai Gilgeous played on the same team as him, and there's also a guy, Hamidou Diallo, who before used to be in my first round for the NBA mock draft. He'll probably be in my draft when the fast break gets to the final 2-round mock that we're going to do. Like, you had at least those two guys alone. I know there's Vanderbilt, I know there's Washington on that team as well, but just those two guys alone, Knox and Diallo, whereas Alabama, I'm with you, where all you heard about Alabama was either Colin Sexton or head coach Avery. Like, that's all you heard was Avery or Sexton, Avery or Sexton. Most of the times together, because when they showed them, they were talking to each other. So, I mean, that's not something that I want to knock Colin Sexton for, but that's something that we've seen what Shai can do with talent around him, with guys around him, to where I can see that and go, all right, if he can take this guy like Kevin Knox and make him better in this way, what can he do with my roster?
Well, exactly. And I don't, again, I don't want to completely knock Colin Sexton for that, because sometimes you can't help that, as an individual player. I think you could probably look at the other side and say, yeah, Colin Sexton's that good. That's the guy we know. That's the guy we want to talk about because he's that good. He's the one making the plays. But you also want to be able to open it up, create space for other guys to make plays as well. And if the other guys are not taking advantage of that, that's on them. That's one thing. But if they're not being given that opportunity, then that's another, especially with Colin Sexton being the leader on Alabama as their point guard. But he is a very good scorer. He's a great scorer. I mean, again, just averaging under 20 points per game. He kind of came in to Alabama, again, a freshman, kind of came in as looked at as a really good defender. Well, he didn't really end up being that great defender for Alabama. I mean, we don't talk about Colin Sexton as, well, he's this really, really good defensive player. If you want a good defensive guy, he's your man. But if you want an offensive guy, he is, and that's true. So that's where I could see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander taking a little bump and dive past Colin Sexton for those reasons.
Let's move on to the next guy, though. The next guy I want to talk about is Michael Porter Jr. He is a guy at 7 on the big board for both you and myself. And just to give the listeners and viewers a little bit of a reference here, in the last big board we did, I had him at, I can't even find him on my big board. I had him at, oh, there he is, number 2 on my big board. You had him at number 5 on your big board. He has now fallen out of the top 5 for us because, like, the people out there that have said, like, oh, he played duty in the last 2 games. Well, all right, it wasn't the Michael Porter that we were expecting. What I saw was a guy that, were there negatives? Yeah. The big negative for me was, because it didn't look like he wanted to trust his back 100%, he couldn't get into the offense. He also looked like a guy that, hey, I haven't played since, I don't know, November 10th. Since Dave's birthday was the last time that he played. So he didn't really have a sense of, what's my role on this team? How do I fit into this offense? But the thing I did like about him, especially in the Florida State game, hitting 7 of 9 from the foul line, but also in both games, grabbing 10 boards against Florida State, grabbing 8 boards against the Georgia Bulldogs. There were some positives, but what these 2 games have showed is, let's be honest, he's still got a little bit of a road before he's back to being the player, if he will ever be the player that we thought he would at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, he dropped for me because he's not fully healed. I mean, he is not fully healed
Well, he
from
even
that.
said he was at, 65% when he played that Georgia game?
And that's great. You're being tough. You're trying to go out there. You're trying to help your team. But for the most part, you didn't. For the most part, you didn't. I mean, you did have one game, I think, I can't remember which one it was, where you had some decent stats. When you look at it, you have a double-double. You know, that's no one's going to...
That was the Florida State game.
Yeah, I thought that's the game it was. No one's going to shake their head at that and go, well, you did nothing. No one's going to do that. I mean, if they are, forget them. But you're not fully healed. You didn't play all that well in the games that you returned. You're going to now have to, for the NBA Combine, you're going to have to really impress there, and you're going to have to show that you are fully healed. No one, I'm probably not accurate in saying this, but no one is going to want you as badly as they did before if you're not. Because no one wants to go out and right away get damaged goods. If you know that somebody has not fully recovered from an injury, if you know someone has a lingering back injury, I don't get excited and go, oh, I want them right away. No, you don't. I don't care how well they played before the injury. I don't care how good they were before the injury. That's what you could have had. This is what you'd be getting. And if he cannot fully recover from it, and sometimes you cannot, but if he's only ever going to get to be 90% is his new 100, or 80% is his new 100, you do have to move on. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the case. I'm kind of being the really downer, the Debbie Downer over here. But you also have to be realistic. If he's only able to get to one spot and can't get over that, physically, that's where you're at now. However good you were is how good you were, not are. So those are big key things. But I think that he's a great three-point shooter. He has great ball skills. Really, it's going to come down to his mobility and how he's able to perform, again, like I said, at the Combine later on in the year. But that is going to be the biggest thing for me. Is he going to show that he's got the strength, that it's back in his back, that it's healed, that he feels comfortable and confident? He didn't feel comfortable and confident when he was out there. He went out there, but he didn't feel comfortable and confident. If he's able to get back to that point, that's going to be important. 2
things I'm thinking of. Number 1, this is the short one. There's only one way he goes number 1 in the NBA draft. Do you want to know what that is? Sixers win the lottery. If the Sixers win the lottery, he will go number 1. Because what have the Sixers done the last 2 years?
They've taken damaged goods.
They've taken damage. Like Joel Embiid coming out. We were like, oh, you don't want him. You don't want him. All the injuries he had in Kansas. Sit for a year, Joel. Sit for a year. Ben Simmons coming in. Oh, you don't want him. He's damaged goods. I remember you on podcast. He's going to be a bust.
Oh, I'm so pissed because I wanted him to be. I really did. Because I had said it. I wanted it to come into reality.
It's okay. Just like me last year, I was all on the Lonzo's better than Markelle train. I was all over the Lonzo's going to be rookie of the year, light it up, and Markelle's not going to be a thing. I was on that train as well, but they are like...
Well, yours almost worked out.
Yeah, and this is the thing that, like, and that plays into my thought of the reason why I don't think Michael Porter Jr. is, like, he's not a top 5 player in this draft because of what I saw in the last 2 games from the injury. He's not at 100%, which, duh. However, if I didn't see you play, I'd still be on the fact of he's still the number 2 prospect behind DeAndre Ayton. I would still be on that if I never saw him play those games. But the reason why I don't think he's going to be taken in the top 5 is I don't think any of the tanking teams, Phoenix, Memphis, Dallas, Atlanta, Orlando, none of those teams, and the way I'm going to phrase this is going to make Philly fans feel big and tough, but none of those teams have the balls to do what the Sixers have done. None of them have the balls to say, we're going to draft this guy. He ain't going to play for a full year. He's going to be on the pony. He's going to take a redshirt year, take a full year to get fully healed and get ready for the NBA. No team in the top 5, I would say right now, has that much confidence to do it. Because the thing with Philly, like, yeah, they're good right now, and I know this is kind of getting into fast break territory, but I want to mention it anyways because it relates to Michael Porter, is if this was last year's draft, he'd be going, like, if Philly had the number 2 and Ben Simmons was gone, Philly would take Michael Porter. Because they'd be like, whatever, we're just going to sit him. Because they were like, you know what, we don't care how bad we are, we're going to be good one day. And no team is going to do that. That's why I feel like right now, where does he go? And I feel like a thing is, it's how far does he fall? That's the thing I'm thinking right now. Yes, he has the combine. He can prove us at the combine, hey, I am healthy now, and everything can be erased. If he's 100% healthy, shows what he's capable of, all right, this conversation never happened. He is back. But if that doesn't happen, he could be the one that could fall for me. Where it could be like, 7th best. Oh, but he went 10th overall. Ooh, he went 9th overall. Ooh, he went 11th overall. I'm not saying like he's going to fall really far, like out of the lottery, but he's a guy that could fall a few spots if that combine isn't up to par or up to where we want to see following what we saw in the conference tournament and the national tournament.
Well, I think that just a lot of teams, they're not always willing to risk it to get the biscuit because those GMs, they like their jobs.
Well, Sam Hinkie's fired. He was the trust the process guy.
You know, I think that there's a lot of that, though. There's a lot of that worry and that speculation that, hey, I know what this guy can be. I've played it out in my head, but my owner wants to win now because we're in an age of we have to win now.
We got to make money.
And there's so many teams that need to win now and want to win now because of just what you said. They need to put fans in those seats so that they can make the money to be able to go out and get big name guys in free agency when they're free agents so that they can go out and get the LeBrons and have them come to their team so they can win now. You know, but not every GM is willing to do that. And not many people are willing to get a guy, let him sit for a whole year, and then be able to come in. They want to get a guy who's going to produce right away. And I get it. I see both sides, and I don't know where I would fall, but there are also some owners who kind of just put it in their GM's hands and say, do it. Go. Go. I'm with you. You know, and even if they have to go through
like
some
Jerry
of the rough times. Well, we see how that worked out.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Go ahead and take Ken Griffey. It's not his prime? Yeah, just take him.
Wait.
Just go and trade for him.
It doesn't matter how bad we are because we still sell out games. All right, do whatever you want, Garpax. Like, there are owners like that as well. But let's move on into the last guy because we are getting a little long in the tooth here. This is our longest segment so far. Robert Williams. This is a guy for me. I had fall a little bit. The only reason I really had him fall was because guys jumped ahead of him. That's usually how it works. He's a guy that I had at 15. You have at 13. Pardon me. What are your thoughts on Robert Williams coming into this draft?
Well, I think Robert Williams, when you look at Texas A&M in the run that they had, which I thought was really, really nice, especially with the way that they were able to go out there and beat North Carolina. Defensively, they did a really good job. Offensively, they were just perfect. Mm-hmm. They were perfect, and I think Robert Williams was a big part of that. I think that you look at a guy who can go up, you're looking at a guy who can go up and really get any 50-50 ball up there. Mm-hmm. He's got the size, he's got the length. I really think here at 6'9", 240, this is going to be a solid player for any team. I think his jumper needs to get better because I think anywhere outside of 8 feet it could be a question. But I think this is an overall pretty well-rounded guy. And again, I just kind of look at, I don't want to say completely, but I looked at what he did in the tournament, and I thought it was good. And one thing that really kind of highlighted his tournament for me was that big dunk that he had wide open, kind of cherry picking in the North Carolina game, and just slammed it down. And that kind of put a cherry on top of things.
Now, here's the only thing that kind of, I don't want to say bugs me, what's the word I'm looking for, worries me when it comes to Robert Williams, and that is the three-point percentage. And the reason why it worries me is he's a guy he's got a wingspan of 7'4", but he's a guy to me that's not tall enough to be a 5. A team's not going to draft him to be a 5. He's probably going to be a 4, a very tall 4, maybe not a very tall 4, medium 4 maybe, on the taller end, if any, at the next level. A medium guy on the taller end, yeah. Yeah, he'll be in between it. But, like, I look at it because he's 6'9", and I look at two guys. I'm comparing two guys that are ahead of him, and you've got Wendell Carter, who both you and I have him ahead of Robert Williams, and Jaren Jackson Jr., or Triple J as Dave likes to call him. And these are all guys. Robert Williams is about an inch shorter than the rest of them. They all have similar wingspans, with Wendell Carter's being an inch shorter than Triple J and Robert Williams III. But the thing is, when you look at their three-point percentages, Robert Williams, it wasn't like he was shooting threes. He wasn't asked to shoot threes. Mm-hmm. He averaged about not even 1 per game at Texas A&M. But when you look at like Wendell Carter, he was hitting 41% from beyond the arc. Yeah, he was taking only 2 per game, but he was still hitting 41 from beyond the arc. And then you also have Triple J, who, he took a little more, maybe about 5 per game, was hitting about 39 from beyond the arc. And I'm using Tankathon for those stats. That's the only thing that worries me about Robert Williams is this is an NBA, a day and age where we don't expect the 4 to be like, oh my God, shoot the lights out Steph Curry style from 3. But we look for stretch 4s, guys that, hey, I can play the 4, but I'm going to stretch out to that 3 line and hit a couple 3s. Like, I kind of think of like K-Love with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where it's like, I'm not a guy that plays in the post anymore. I'm going to slide out to that corner and drop a 3 on you as well. I don't know if Robert Williams has that. He wasn't asked for it in college, so I don't necessarily know if he has that, and that's a worry for me at the next level.
But I think that's also going to be the same thing for any team. They don't know. They can't. That's what could be value.
I'm not saying he's undraftable.
No. I know you're not saying that. But what I'm saying is that could have been value added that you cannot add because he didn't do it. So that's something that you can't just say, oh, I know he does this. So that's another thing that he's going to bring to the table. No, but he's also going to have to show them that he can be consistent and that there will be a role for him. It may not be he may not be the biggest guy out there, the biggest name out there and everything like that, but there's going to be a role that he's going to fill and that he's going to be able to fit into. But there's going to have to be consistency when it comes to Robert Williams. You never want a guy who's, good this night, doesn't produce this night. Really good this night, doesn't produce this night. He's going to have to be kind of consistent across the board. But I think with his size and his athleticism, he can do that. Mm-hmm. He's just going to have to show it at the next level.
And I mean, for me, what I have is the main reason why I have him, and I kind of did this in my head, thinking about it. The reason why I put him at 15 and not 14 or not 13 was because at 15, you were the first person out of the lottery. And the thing for me, the reason why I put him just outside the lottery, so you'd be into playoff teams, is because at the next level, I don't think he's going to be a scorer. We're not going to ask him for his scoring ability. He's going to be a guy a team drafts at about a 15 through 20 to where they go, I just want a big guy that where coming off the bench, I can put him in. He's going to grab loose balls. He's going to grab me rebounds, block a shot or two, and be a presence on the defensive end and on the loose ball end, and not necessarily be a guy that's going to get me 15 plus points from down low and stretching outside.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, if you can get a guy and know that you're going to get a guy who's going to bring down, he's going to bring down 10 rebounds for you, have 3 blocks, and chip in 10 points, I'm happy with that. If I know I'm getting that consistently and you're doubling for me almost consistently every time you're going in, if you're going in off the bench, that's great. If you're a starter, okay, you'd probably want more points than if you're a starter. But if you're going off the bench and that's what you're getting, I'm very happy with that. But
the thing about being a starter is if someone else is chipping in those points.
The biggest thing for me is going to be the rebounds, because that's where I look at him as being the biggest factor. He's going to be the biggest factor for Robert Williams is his rebounding ability.
Those long arms, man. That 7'4" wingspan.
And being 240, you're going to be you're built to be able to, like I said, a 50-50 ball, you're winning it.
Yeah.
You're most likely winning it. So a team is going to want that. A team's going to want a little bit more. Again, it's that value-added type of thing that Robert Williams just necessarily isn't bringing.
Well, and if it's I don't know this because, like I said, wasn't asked for it at Texas A&M. If he develops a 3 and just hits a little bit of behind the arc and develops that a little bit, that's going to bring that scoring up a little bit to where it's more like 14, 15 points per game, which could help him at the next level. But I want to know what you guys think. Let us know down below. What do you guys think about our 6 through 15 guys we talked about? What would your 6 through 15 look like? Let us know down below in the comment section.